Marcus Delgado had learned, in the 3 years since his wife passed away, that mornings were the hardest part of the day. Not because of the silence. He had made peace with silence. It was the small things. The way Lily always came downstairs with one sock on and one sock missing. The way she expected pancakes on Tuesdays. The way she looked at the empty chair across the breakfast table sometimes, just for a second, before looking away and pretending she had not looked at all. She was 7 years old, and already very good at pretending things were fine. Marcus was 38 and still learning. He worked as an architect at a mid-sized firm in Chicago. He was good at his job, careful with details, patient with clients. But the last 2 years had been rough financially. His wife's medical bills had taken everything they had saved. He had borrowed from a lender to keep the firm going. The lender, it turned out, was owned by Zhao Ventures, one of the largest real estate companies in the country. He had not known that when he signed the papers. He knew it now. On a cold Tuesday morning, he left Lily with his mother and drove downtown to the Zhao Ventures building. He was wearing his best jacket, which was beginning to look like it had seen too many best occasions. He had come to ask for more time on the loan. He had a plan. He had a presentation. He had rehearsed what he was going to say in the elevator on the way up. He did not expect what happened next. A man in a gray suit met him at the reception desk and led him not to a loan officer's office, but to the 42nd floor. The office there was large and quiet, with a view of the lake that seemed almost unfair given the situation. At a long table sat 3 lawyers, a notary, and a very old man in a wheelchair, who introduced himself as Elder Chen Zhao. "Sit down, Mr. Delgado," Elder Zhao said. His voice was soft but precise, like a man who had spent a lifetime choosing every word carefully. Marcus sat. The lawyers slid a document across the table. Marcus looked at it. He read it twice. He looked up. "You want me to marry your granddaughter," he said. "I want you to consider it," Elder Zhao replied, as if that were a perfectly reasonable distinction. The terms were clear. If Marcus agreed to the arrangement and remained in the marriage for at least 1 year, all of his debt to Zhao Ventures would be cleared. His firm would be protected. His mother's house, which had been quietly listed as collateral, would be safe. If he refused, the debt would be called in within 30 days, and everything would fall apart. Marcus sat very still for a long moment. "Does your granddaughter know about this?" he asked. "She has agreed," Elder Zhao said. "That is not what I asked." The old man looked at him for a moment, and something in his expression shifted slightly. Not quite respect, but close to it. "She knows," he said finally, "and she has agreed. That is all I can tell you." Marcus drove home in silence. He sat outside his mother's house in the car for a long time, watching the light in the kitchen window. He could see his mother's shadow moving around. He could see the blue glow of the television in the living room, where Lily was probably watching cartoons. His whole ordinary, imperfect, irreplaceable life was right there inside that house. He went inside and signed the papers the next morning. He met Vivienne Zhao for the first time 4 days before the wedding. She was already seated when he arrived at the restaurant, a quiet place that had been booked privately for the occasion. She was reading something on her phone and did not look up immediately when he sat down. She was dressed simply, in black, with no jewelry except small gold earrings. She was, Marcus thought, one of the most composed people he had ever seen. Not cold exactly, just contained. "Mr. Delgado," she said, setting her phone face down on the table. "Marcus is fine," he said. She nodded once. "Vivienne." They ordered food that neither of them ate much of. She asked him 2 questions: what kind of architecture he practiced, and what Lily's schedule looked like on school days. He answered both carefully. She listened carefully. She did not offer information about herself unless directly asked, and even then her answers were short and precise, like everything about her. By the end of the dinner, Marcus realized he had learned almost nothing about her. He also realized, strangely, that he did not feel threatened by her. Uncertain, yes. A little overwhelmed, but not afraid. When they stood to leave, she said, without quite looking at him, "The room next to the guest suite has good light in the mornings. I thought Lily might like it." He looked at her. She was already putting on her coat. "Thank you," he said. She nodded and walked out. He stood there for a moment longer, trying to figure out what he had just agreed to share his life with, and finding that he genuinely did not know. The wedding was small. 30 guests, all quiet, all chosen carefully. Marcus wore a suit he had bought the day before because his mother had refused to let him wear the old one. Lily wore a yellow dress she had picked herself and carried a small bunch of flowers she kept rearranging nervously throughout the ceremony. Vivienne walked in alone. She wore white because Elder Zhao had asked her to, and because, Marcus suspected, she had decided it was a small enough thing to give an old man who was running out of time. She looked calm. She always looked calm. He was beginning to wonder if she had ever been otherwise. Lily waved at her from the front row. It was a small, cheerful wave, completely out of place in the formal atmosphere of the room. Vivienne looked at her. For just a moment, less than a second, something passed across her face. Then it was gone, and she was composed again. There was no kiss arranged in the ceremony program. The officiant paused. Marcus glanced at Vivienne. She looked back at him, the faintest question in her eyes. He leaned forward and kissed her cheek quietly. She did not move away. They signed the papers. They had dinner. They went home. To the same home, for the first time. The first month was like two people learning to share a library without speaking. Vivienne left for work before Lily woke up. She returned after Lily was in bed. On the few evenings she came home earlier, she went directly to the study. Marcus did not press. He cooked dinner and left a plate in the refrigerator, with a small note indicating what it was and how to reheat it. The notes were never acknowledged. The plates were always empty in the morning. He took it as a good sign. On the third morning, he made extra toast and left a piece on the counter without comment. She picked it up on her way past the kitchen without slowing down. The next morning, he did it again. She picked it up again. It became, without either of them deciding it, a small daily routine. Lily was less patient than her father. She had decided, in the practical and confident way of 7-year-olds, that Vivienne was interesting and that she wanted to know more about her. She asked questions at breakfast, addressed to no one in particular, that were clearly about Vivienne. What did CEOs eat for lunch? Did rich people have the same dreams as normal people? Was it hard to be quiet all the time? Marcus gently redirected these. Vivienne, on the mornings she was present, answered 2 or 3 of them with brief, honest replies that always surprised him slightly. One Saturday, Lily slid a drawing under the study door. It was in crayon, 3 figures holding hands, labeled in large letters. Marcus, Lily, Vivi. She had given Vivienne a yellow dress in the drawing, same as her own. No one knew what Vivienne did with it, but it was never in the trash. 6 weeks into the marriage, everything shifted on a Saturday afternoon at the park near their building. Lily had been running ahead on the path. Marcus was 3 steps behind, on a call with a difficult client, one hand raised in the universal gesture of, "I am sorry," one moment. He heard Lily fall before he saw it, that particular sharp sound of small knees meeting concrete. By the time he ended the call and turned, Vivienne was already there. She had been coming back from somewhere, still in her work coat, bag over one shoulder. She had seen Lily fall and had not hesitated. She was crouching beside her on the path, pressing her own folded handkerchief against Lily's scraped knee, speaking to her in a low and steady voice. "It's going to sting for another minute," she said. "Then it won't. I promise." Lily looked up at her, eyes wet, lower lip unsteady. "How do you know?" Vivienne held her gaze without blinking. "Because I've had worse and survived." Lily considered this. Then she leaned her head against Vivienne's shoulder, and Vivienne sat very still, as if she was afraid that moving might break something. Marcus watched from a few feet away. He did not say anything. That night, after Lily was asleep, he found Vivienne in the kitchen. He sat across from her and did not leave. They talked, slowly at first, carefully, like 2 people walking across ice, about small things, about architecture, about a building she had seen in Tokyo that she thought he would like, about why she always kept the window cracked at night. "So I can hear something real," she said. He did not ask what she meant. He thought he understood. It was the longest conversation they had ever had. It lasted almost 2 hours. When it ended, neither of them mentioned it the next day, but something had quietly changed, and they both felt it. At the 10-week mark, the thing that Vivienne had been quietly preparing for arrived. 3 senior board members of Zhao Ventures, led by a man named Raymond Fisk, called an emergency board meeting and moved to remove her as CEO. They had been collecting support quietly for months. They presented documents they claimed proved she had approved contracts that were not legitimate. The boardroom was full. Several people who had worked alongside Vivienne for years said nothing in her defense. The silence of allies, she had learned long ago, was its own particular kind of weight. Fisk spoke for 20 minutes. He was confident and polished and extremely careful about the way he framed everything. When he finished, he looked at Vivienne and said, almost pleasantly, "We'd welcome a response, of course." Vivienne stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not perform anger or strength or cold authority. She did something no one in that room had ever seen her do in 15 years. She spoke about herself. She told them that she had been taught, from the time she was a small girl in her grandfather's house, that her voice was something to be careful with, that women who spoke boldly were described in ways that made other women afraid to do the same, that she had spent 15 years running this company in near silence because she had believed, somewhere in the back of her mind, that if she spoke freely, they would not hear her anyway. She told them she was done believing that. Then she opened her laptop. On the screen behind her, she projected a single image. Not a financial document, not legal evidence. A crayon drawing of 3 people holding hands, 2 of them in yellow dresses, one of them labeled Vivi. The room went completely still. A 7-year-old girl who had known me for 10 weeks drew me into her family picture, Vivienne said. She did not ask if she was allowed. She did not wait for permission. She simply included me. She paused. I have spent my entire life waiting to be included. I am done waiting, and I am done being silent. Then, calmly and methodically, she presented everything else. Every fraudulent document Fisk had planted, traced to its source. Every proxy vote he had quietly collected, with the communication records attached. Every step of a plan he had been executing for 7 months, which she had known about for 6 of them. She had waited. She had collected. She had said nothing. Until now. Raymond Fisk was escorted from the building within the hour. The days that followed were quiet in a new way, not the careful quiet of 2 strangers sharing a space, but the comfortable quiet of people who had stopped needing to explain themselves to each other. Vivienne started coming home for dinner twice a week, then 3 times. Lily accepted this without comment, as if she had always expected it. She had renamed Vivienne Vivi, firmly and permanently, and while Vivienne corrected her every single time, she did it with less and less conviction. Marcus showed her his current project one evening, a community center he was designing for a neighborhood that had been waiting for one for years. She sat beside him at the drafting table and asked questions for an hour. Real questions, the kind that showed she was thinking. He found himself explaining things he had not explained to anyone since his wife, not because the words were the same, but because the attention felt the same. Elder Zhao passed away quietly at month 4. He had been declining for some time, and his passing was peaceful. He left behind a handwritten letter for Vivienne, the first personal letter he had ever written her in her adult life. It was short. It said that he had been wrong to handle things the way he had, that he should have asked her what she wanted, long ago, that the company had never been more important than her voice, and he was sorry it had taken him so long to say so. Vivienne read it alone, with the door closed. Marcus left tea outside the door without knocking. When she came out an hour later, the cup was warm. He had quietly replaced it. She carried it to the dining room, where he and Lily were doing a puzzle at the table. Lily had pieces spread across half the surface, in a system that made sense only to herself. Vivienne sat down. She looked at the puzzle. She picked up a piece. She placed it correctly without a word. Lily looked up, surprised. "You're good at this." "I have a good eye for where things belong," Vivienne said. She stayed at the table until the puzzle was finished. Then she stayed a little longer. No one in that house was pretending things were fine anymore. Things actually were. And that made all the difference.